Remember that time Matthew McConaughey starred in an NC-17 rated dark horror thriller comedy thing from the director of The Exorcist called Killer Joe? Yeah. Who wants some fried chicken?
I need $6,000 or some guys are gonna kill me.
Better get out of town, quick!
You ever hear of Joe Cooper? He's a cop, a detective actually. Got a little business on the side.
What's he do?
He kills people.
Okay, so Killer Joe was released during what's called the McConaughsaunce by fans, and it was that period around in the early, about 8 years ago now, when Matthew McConaughey was sort of tired of being the Mr. Rom-Com. He was tired of being world's sexiest man. He wanted to be thought of as more of an actor. On top of that, his movies weren't making as much money as they used to, so he sort of needed to rebrand anyway. And he did a string of very successful and well-received performances. And through a weird quirk, they were all kind of released in a very condensed period. I don't think they all came out the same year, but they were all released within like 12 months of each other. And you had Mud, which is a good movie. You had The Wolf of Wall Street, which he had a glorified cameo in, even though he was billed, I think, third. I think he's only 3 minutes of a 3-hour movie. He had Bernie, that Jack Black true crime thing. He had Magic Mike, the Channing Tatum stripper thing. I never saw that one. And yeah, he had the movie that won the Oscar, Dallas Buyers Club, and this, Killer Joe. Now, Killer Joe is my favorite of the six, and it was probably also the least seen of them, and the reason is because you can't release an NC-17 movie in the United States. It just doesn't work. No one, most theaters won't carry it. A lot of retailers won't carry it. But William Friedkin didn't want to cut it. Yeah, he was very adamant that this be released in the form that it was shot and in the form that Tracy Letts, the screenwriter and playwright that was originally a play, had conceived it. So it was kind of a death sentence for the movie. It would have taken a miracle for this flick to get off the ground, and it didn't. It made a very small amount of money, but the people who saw it generally liked it, and it was well received by critics. So I like this movie a lot, and I think it's a really cool movie. Now, it's not as good as the previous William Friedkin Tracy Letts movie, Bug. Now, Bug is phenomenal. Bug is like an A+. Bug is an amazing movie. Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon. It very much looks like a play, but it never feels limited by that. Now, Killer Joe, this is an expansive enough story that it's kind of hard to imagine this is a play. You got a lot of locations in this. I mean, the cast is fairly small, but you move around a lot. It's not one of those movies where it's like, oh yeah, this was a play because 90% of it takes place in this room with these three people. So I like that about it. So this is kind of funny. Okay, so basically the movie's events start off when the one of the main characters is played by Emile Hirsch, who was had his own. Okay, so Emile Hirsch is that short kid that started in Into the Wild. He got all that acclaim from it, and it looked like he was about to become this big star. And then he was in Speed Racer, and it shot his career right in the back. Like he was done immediately. But he did manage to get Killer Joe after that. But Killer Joe, he's very much second banana to Matthew McConaughey, even though you could argue he's kind of the main character. So Emile Hirsch is this, poor, regular, small, southern-ish town. I think this takes place in Texas, so yeah, southern town guy. And he's got a drug debt hanging over his head. And the reason he has a drug debt hanging over his head is because his mom stole his cocaine and threw him out. That is the most white trash thing I've ever heard in my life, and supposedly this was inspired by a true story, but it was like some small little blip of a true story that Tracy Letts just saw in a newspaper, so it's not really easy to find information on. It's kind of like River's Edge, like this happened once somewhere, but no one really knows that much about it. So anyway, he decides that to get back at her and to get his money back, because the people that he owes money to, a guy called Digger Soames, which he's not in this movie very much, but that is the coolest name ever. Digger Soames. I know probably he wasn't born Digger, but it's still a good nickname. Says he's going to kill him if he doesn't get him his money. So he's got to get this cash together very quickly, and he comes up with this scheme to kill his mom and get her insurance money. Now, he assumes that her life insurance policy, he believes that her life insurance policy is under her daughter's name, and her daughter is played by Juno Temple, and she lives with their father. Now, the father and mother are no longer together. The father's with a new woman played by Gina Gershon. The father's played by Thomas Hayden Church. Juno Temple's a pretty girl that pops up in smallish parts. I generally think of her as Ray Liotta's Hooker from Sin City 2, but she's been in some other stuff. I completely forgotten she was in Black Mass. But yeah, and then Thomas Hayden Church, the father, is most famous for Spider-Man 3 and that Wine Vineyard movie with Paul Giamatti, Sideways, and Demon Knight, the Tales from the Crypt movie, which he was awesome in. And Gina Gershon will never be able to convince people she's anything but that chick from Showgirls and Bound, which were made back to back. So that's the dynamic. As he goes to the father and tells him, we need to kill mom. We need to find out a way to do that. And the father and him come up with this scheme to get this local hitman, who's actually a cop, played by Matthew McConaughey, whose nickname is Killer Joe because people in this town are very imaginative. So they go to Killer Joe, and they don't have any money to pay him though. So this is asking for a hitman to kill on credit, which I don't think you're supposed to do. But luckily for them, Joe is taken with Dottie, the young daughter. And Juno Temple's a very pretty girl, so he says, I'll keep her as a retainer. And what that means is he gets to bang Dottie in the meantime until they pay him. So, and Dottie is not entirely on board with this plan. But Joe actually kind of approaches it more like a courtship than anything, so he is at least decent in that respect. And he does, weirdly enough, seem to kind of care for Dottie. Now, Dottie is presumably brain damaged. It's not explicitly stated, and these people are so white trash they probably wouldn't have bothered taking to a doctor, but she says that she was held underwater by her mother for a lengthy period of time. So, and they don't ever say her name. I'm going to say she's somewhere between 15 and 21. It's hard to tell, especially because Juno Temple is such a small-framed girl. Now, some people think she's supposed to be a child. She's supposed to be, what does she say during the sex scene? I'm 11 or something, but she was clearly remembering when she lost her virginity. She's not 11. There's no way she's 11. I think that this character is anywhere from 15 to 21. I would be surprised if she was much older than that. I would be surprised if she was much younger than that. So Joe is banging Dottie, and Emile Hirsch kind of has this crisis of conscience, and he's like, "Oh, let's call it off." And Joe's like, "Look in the trunk." And things keep getting worse from there. So this is a cool movie. It kind of reminds me of like a particularly evil Coen Brothers movie, like Fargo or No Country for Old Men. Not the lighthearted Coens, but when they get dark. It reminds me a lot of that. So it's a cool, weird, edgy comic thing. It's like this is one of those things that they actually have trouble getting people attached to because the content it gets so extreme at points. NC-17 rating. But Tracy Letts, who wrote it, it was his first play. It was originally produced off Broadway, and the role of Killer Joe was conceived for Scott Glenn. Scott Glenn, probably best known as the FBI boss in The Silence of the Lambs, or as Denzel Washington's contact that he ultimately betrays and robs in Training Day. And it was it was a fairly successful little run. Apparently, Gina Gershon was actually offered the same character when it was going to be a stage play, and she said she just couldn't imagine doing the simulated rape scene every night. It would just be too much for her, so she passed on it. But for a movie, it's like, I can do that one day. And it would be brutal, because it is a harsh scene. So, it had its run on the play, and then William Friedkin had worked with Tracy Letts on Bug, and even though Bug was a very divisive movie, I think that Friedkin could see the quality, and Tracy Letts is, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say Tracy Letts is some kind of underdog. He's a very successful playwright. His play August Osage County won a Tony and a Pulitzer. I didn't even know they gave Pulitzers for plays. And it was made into a movie with Julia Roberts and Meryl Streep, and I saw the movie, and I really didn't see what was so great about it, but maybe the play was a lot better. I don't know if they changed anything. I have no idea. It's very different from Bug and Killer Joe. It's just a family drama. Bug being an intense psychological horror, and Killer Joe being this weird crime dramedy, I guess you'd probably call it. I don't know. So they got this movie together, and first off, they had to cast Killer Joe, and they apparently went to Kurt Russell, and Kurt Russell said, "My wife will kill me if I take this role." So it ended up going to McConaughey, and again, McConaughey was trying to rebrand. He was trying to break out from being the handsome guy who takes his shirt off a lot. And Joe was a very intense character for him. Now, McConaughey had definitely given good performances before, he started doing Dallas Buyers Club and all that, going back to, but he wasn't in like Oscar type movies. The closest I think you would say he came was probably A Time to Kill and Two for the Money. Oh, he was in Amistad also. But yeah, he got into that sort of trap after he did How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, I think was the first romantic comedy he did that really blew up. So he just did a long string of those, and when Killer Joe came along, he was trying to get people to stop thinking of him that way and playing this guy. And the cool thing is that Joe is such a dichotomous character, because he actually is really sweet around Dottie, but He's all business when he's talking to the men of the family, and then at the end you really see his dark side because you never see him kill anybody. Like that's not on camera, but when it becomes clear to him that he might not be getting his money, he just straight up beats and simulates rape on Gina Gershon's character in front of her family. What he does is he puts a chicken bone through his zipper of his pants like it's his dick and makes her suck it and acts like he's really enjoying it. And I think it's safe to say that what he's enjoying is the pain and humiliation because obviously it's not a sexual act. And I actually really enjoyed the part in that scene where he tells Gina Gershon that if she lies to him, I'm going to cut your face off and wear it as a mask. Dark. And that also reminded me that Matthew McConaughey was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 4, where faces are often cut off and worn as masks. And I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4. That is the most deranged movie. That's actually my favorite McConaughey performance. Everyone else hates it. I don't care. I love that movie. But he's really good as Killer Joe. And yeah, it's just one of those movies where everyone makes bad decisions all the time, including Joe. I mean, you talking to these stupid trailer trash idiots, you actually think you're ever going to get your money back? I mean, these are people that would get turned down for a credit card. So, yeah, it's just a good, darkly funny time. Now, I mean, if you're a sensitive type, then you might not be able to kind of find the fun in it. But it's definitely one of the edgier movies. It's more in the wheelhouse of Frailty or True Detective in terms of McConaughey's filmography. He hasn't done many movies that go as dark as this. But yeah, so like I said, McConaughey's great. Gina Gershon is very good in it. Thomas Hayden Church and Juno Temple I actually don't like that much in this movie. In this movie, they're doing that weird, disconnected, ironic acting that was actually kind of popular in the 2000s, where everyone kind of talks like they don't realize that the camera's rolling yet, and they're just rehearsing their lines. And Thomas Hayden Church has been great in other things, so I feel like that was just a bad choice on their part. They're not bad actors. You know, Temple, I mean, I've never really been blown away by anything she did, but I think she's generally fine in everything I've seen her in. But yeah, so I didn't love their performances. Emile Hirsch is good as a loser. I will say that. He's not one of my favorite actors, but he's good as a loser in this. I've seen him in a few other things. He was in Lone Survivor, that Mark Wahlberg movie. He was in the Bonnie and Clyde miniseries. And he just had a tiny, tiny part in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He was the guy that was living with Margot Robbie at the end. Short guy. So, yeah, the cast is generally a little bit of a mixed bag, but I think McConaughey's good enough that he more than carries the movie. So you kind of don't need too much else. And it is a well-shot movie. William Friedkin's a brilliant director. I actually got the idea to do this movie because one of the channels I follow on YouTube, Sinister Cinema, just did his movie Cruising. And the thing is that even when Friedkin makes a bad movie, and he absolutely has made some bad films, now he's made some classics also, but they always are interesting. They're always visually interesting or something. The only exception I can think of to that is The Guardian. And watching The Guardian, I feel like there had to have been some sort of production problem there. That movie just felt, it didn't feel like it had his stamp, but then again, everyone has a bad day, so maybe that was just his one movie to really fail on. Because like I said, he has made other bad movies. Jade is not a good movie. Jade, that erotic thriller he did in the mid-90s, they're still very visually interesting. There's some cool shots in Jade. It's just not a good script at all. But yeah, Friedkin is a fearless filmmaker. Now, he's best known, he's always going to be best known for The French Connection and The Exorcist. French Connection, one of the all-time great cop movies, and The Exorcist, one of the all-time great horror movies. And then Bug is a movie that should be talked about in that same way, because it is a brilliant movie, but just I don't think enough people saw it. And Killer Joe is one of his better movies. It's not his best movie, but it's a very, very good movie. It's a very interesting, unique movie that showcases just how uncompromising of a filmmaker is. Going back to The Exorcist, if he wants to shoot something, he's going to shoot it. And he's not going to worry that people will think he's weird or that it might damage his career later or whatever. He's just going to make the movie he set out to make. I mean, forgot The Exorcist. You have what was she, 12, 13-year-old girl stabbing herself in the vagina with a cross screaming, "Let Jesus fuck you." And in this movie, you have a megastar, pretty boy Matthew McConaughey mouth raping Gina Gershon with a chicken bone. Like, he's going to go for it if the material calls for it. So I respect that, and I respect his decision to stand by his guns and say, nah, I really don't want this movie to get released in a cut form.
You know I'll kill you.
It smells heavenly. Who would like to say grace?
So there's an R-rated cut of this movie, and it was apparently done by the studio. They just said, we've got to make some money on this thing. So they did do an R-rated cut for the home release, just so stores like Walmart or Target would sell it. But I've never seen the R-rated cut. Apparently it loses pretty much all the chicken bone scene and a little bit of the beatdown scene. So yeah, this is a good movie. It's a good, weird, offbeat indie that I think a lot of people should get their eyes on. It's a cool flick, and I think it got lost a little bit in the shuffle because Mud, obviously a much more commercial film. Dallas Buyers Club, a very commercial, I won't say very commercial film, but a very watchable movie. It had a lot of humor in it. Obviously Wolf of Wall Street was a big thing, and Bernie was very comical and soft. I think Bernie was even PG-13, and Magic Mike was a very successful kind of girls' night out movie. So this just got lost a bit in the shuffle, and I think that it deserves to be watched again. Like, people should put their eyes on this thing again because it is a good flick. It's one of McConaughey's better movies, I would say. And yeah, so heavy spoilers from here on out. So all of this spoilers. So all of this kind of comes to a head with Joe targeting, basically capturing the family. And when Emile Hirsch realizes that he's not going to get the payout, he also realizes that Joe is probably going to kill him if Dickersohns doesn't first. So he kind of has to make a choice, and he decides he wants to run away with his sister. And throughout the movie, there's been this kind of vague implication that he might have more than brotherly feelings for her. It's not overt, but it does seem like he has a little bit more attachment to her than he should. So he wants her to run away with him, and she says, well, fine, but I want to talk to Joe first. And because she's not all there, I feel like she probably would have said, well, fine, if he had told her he wanted to pack her up in a box and mail her to China. So the thing is that it turns out that she's pregnant with Joe's child. And when things really get bad, when Joe is just straight up beating the dog shit out of Emile Hirsch, she kind of flips out and just starts shooting everybody. And she kills Emile Hirsch, and she kills Thomas Hayden Church, and then she turns the gun on Joe, and when he finds out she's pregnant, he's so happy it's almost heartbreaking, and it seems like she's probably going to kill him, but apparently the play just ended with her pointing the gun at Joe. But in the movie, they added an extra shot of Joe kind of giving her this big smile, and that always made me think that she probably didn't. And there's no definitive answer because you don't know that Tracy Letts intentionally left that unclear. So you could have either interpretation. I tend to think that she probably didn't, but it's hard to say for sure. So it's a cool ambiguous ending, and it's very much like when it cuts to credits, you're like, wait, what? But not in an annoying way, like, oh great, they didn't have an ending. More in a I wonder if she shot him. So I don't think she did, but you could very easily argue because Juno Temple's performance seems like she wanted to, like she was tired of getting dicked around by these guys and she was just going to take them all out. But either or, it's a fun little flick, and I enjoy a lot about it. I think it's a cool, dark, weird, edgy movie. Definitely watch the NC-17 rating. And yeah, that's about all I got on Killer Joe, so remember to like, share, and subscribe. Particularly share, because I still haven't gotten around to setting up a Twitter account. I hate social media, so I'm really putting that off, but I know I need to, because there's no real way to promote the channel other than that. Otherwise, I just got to rely on people finding it through the search algorithm, which I learned isn't that easy to do, because I'm brand new at this, so it's even hard for me to find my videos if I use the search bar. So yeah. So pass it around if you liked it, and I'm going to be doing a lot of horror stuff for the rest of this month. Updates on Wednesday and Friday. I'll be doing the Wrong Turn series in honor of the new Wrong Turn movie coming out theatrically at the end of the month, assuming they don't friggin' shut down theaters again. And got some Lars von Trier stuff I want to do. I got a lot of stuff planned. This was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing because I've done so much horror lately that I wanted to kind of take a break from horror. So yeah, I did Killer Joe. It's a fun little movie. You should watch it.